Testing for YouTube. Testing one, two, three.
Okay, welcome everyone. We will call to order our regular meeting of council and start by recognizing that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Sishat and Hupachasit First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items from councillors? No late items? Any late items from our corporate officer?
No late items, Madam Mayor.
Wonderful. Would somebody like to move approval of our agenda as circulated? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on the agenda? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we have minutes from the special meeting held at 11:30 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on April 22nd, 2024 to be adopted. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Are there any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We have no delegation, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Item number 1 is the City of Port Alberni 2024 to 2028 Financial Plan Q&A follow-up, and we will go to our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through our financial planning process, we've gone through and we've collected all of the questions and provided answers. But with the completion of the financial plan, we cease bringing back that Q&A, but there is still 3 unanswered items. So in the staff report today, we've provided the references to the questions regarding the outstanding items, and they included the breakdown of permit fees from building inspection for the last 3 years per specific type of building permit. And then just the staffing for City Hall, which was the question that was asked, but we don't provide, or we don't track City Hall specifically. So we look back at what was historically provided, going back to 2009, and found the actuals from that period of time, going back to 1992. So we provided that and then updated with the information from 2014 to 2023, with a gap in information in the years 2010 to 2013, because that was within an old payroll system that we couldn't grab the detail from. So we did some estimates around that time based on what we best could, but that is the FTE chart that's attached to this staff report that is provided to complete the request for information or questions that were answered during the financial planning process. And finally, the final one about the museum details, that will be coming back in another report from Parks, Rec, and Culture at a later date.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Okay, seeing no questions, thank you for the report. Would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. And staff reports. Item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Solda. Somewhere. Oh, there it is.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I'll move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated May 13th, 2024 be received and checks numbered 154777 to 154875 and inclusive in payment of accounts totaling $1,233,058.02 be approved.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to bylaws. Item number 1, we have a report dated May 6th for the zoning bylaw amendment for 5350 Margaret Street. Go ahead, Councillor Dane.
Thank you. I will be recusing myself for this as the property is owned by a family member.
Thank you.
So this is a rezoning to our R3 small lot residential zone. It's for final adoption, so I'd be pleased to go over anything that council has any questions on.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Madam Temporary Chair. I would like to make the motion to move final adoption.
We have a motion on the floor. Second? Second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next. Go ahead.
Move on to the next report, which is a lane closure bylaw. So council's being asked to consider, sorry, we should wait for our councilor.
Sorry, Councillor Dame. I'm just kind of throwing myself in this.
Yeah, acting mayor.
Go ahead, Scott.
So council's being asked to consider 3 readings of a lane closure bylaw that would authorize the closure of an unconstructed lane adjacent to 2866 4th Avenue. Section 40 of the Community Charter permits council by bylaw to close all or part of a highway to traffic, to remove it as a dedicated highway. We are required prior to adopting such a bylaw and dispose of the land to publish notice to allow the public to provide any input to council. So that will be done if council moves forward with this. The Lefebvre group of group purchased the majority of the former Zellers parking lot properties in the Uptown District, and they are currently working on a potential 5-story mixed-use building of ground level commercial and about 40 residential units above. The site they are considering for this development is located at 4th and Mar. And if we can bring the map up of the area, it might just be helpful for council to view. The property consists of 2 legal parcels owned by the Lefebvre Group with an unconstructed city-owned land dividing the site. The property is zoned C7, which is our core business district. And again, the proposed mixed-use building is a permitted use on that lands, so a rezoning is not required. However, in order to create the site, a lane closure, which council is being asked to consider there, and you can see the lane closure that's being asked. It was actually developed as part of the parking lot. It's never been built as a lane itself. So the lane closure bylaw needs to be considered by council. And then the subdivision, the city's approving officer would consider the subdivision to consolidate the properties all together. When considering a lane closure, the city must certainly look at infrastructure needs as well as vehicle and access and pedestrian access. Although it's a legally dedicated lane, as I indicated before, the historic use has always been just kind of part of the parking lot that's been there. This proposed lane closure, there's no existing infrastructure under it, nor is there any need for any future infrastructure to go under under this lane. The existing north-south lane will remain open, and there's also an open and existing east-west lane within this block just south of this photo. With these existing lanes remaining open, no infrastructure needs, the proposed closure of the lane will not negatively impact access, infrastructure, or pedestrian access. As I indicated, prior to council considering final adoption, notice must be given to the public in order for them to provide input. And if council moves forward with 3 readings, we would put 2 ads in the AV News on the April 22nd and 29th, and this could potentially come forward to council, and I'd be very pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. Are there questions from council? Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the City of Port Alberni lane closure portion of lane immediately adjacent to the north of 2866 4th Avenue and removal of dedication bylaw number 5103, 2024 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments or questions on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, and if you'd like to continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the City of Port Alberni lane closure portion of lane immediately adjacent to the north of 2866 4th Avenue and removal of dedication bylaw number 5103, 2024 be read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no questions on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Go ahead.
And one more time, Madam Mayor, I move that the City of Port Alberni lane closure, portion of lane immediately adjacent to the north of 2866 Fourth Avenue, and removal of dedication bylaw number 5103, 2024 be read a third time.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Mealy, seconded by Counselor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. We'll move on to correspondence for action. We have one item today, a letter dated April 28th, 2024 from the Alberni Valley Pride Society requesting that the pride flag be flown at city facilities during Pride Week. Would somebody like to make that motion? Moved by Counselor Solda. Seconded by Counselor Haggard. Any comments on this? Seeing none, on the motion to support, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And on to proclamations. We have a request, an email dated April 24th, 2024 from the Pacific Salmon Foundation requesting a proclamation. Councillor Haggard.
We are the salmon capital of the world, so I'd like to move that council on behalf of Pacific Salmon Foundation proclaim June 1st, 2024 as Wild Salmon Day in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Item number 2, under proclamations, we have an email dated April 25th, 2024 from the Save Your Skin Foundation requesting a proclamation. Would somebody like to make this motion? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council on behalf of the Save Your Skin Foundation proclaim the month of May 2024 as Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments on this item? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, we have an email dated May 1st, 2024 from the BC Rural Health Network requesting a proclamation. Would somebody like to make this motion? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council on behalf of the BC Rural Health Network proclaim June 17th, 2024 as Hope Air Day in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments or questions? Councillor Haggard.
I'm sure that the regional district will have this information, but I was wondering if you could ensure that we send a copy of this letter to the emergency manager coordinator so that she'll have it in case we have other road closures in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for thinking of that. Councillor.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. A lot of people don't know what BC Rural Health Network is and Hope Air Day. Maybe it could be explained. I think it's important because there's a lot of people out there do not know about the service.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go to our Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Hope Air provides essential services to rural and remote communities across the country, and the majority of their work is done here in BC. Not only does Hope Air provide air transportation to patients and their caregivers, but also provides accommodations, meals, and ground transportation. So their charitable services need to continue and to be enhanced and to ensure equitable access to care for all who are forced to leave their communities for care and treatment.
Thank you very much. And that motion was passed. So I believe it was passed. Moved and seconded. Yeah, we voted on it. Wonderful. Okay, then item number 4. We have a letter dated May 7th, 2024 from Portal Players requesting a proclamation. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'd like to move that council on behalf of Porter Players proclaim the week of May 20th, 2024 as North Island Zone Drama Festival Week in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments on this? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we'll move to correspondence for information. We have a lot here today, so I will go to our corporate officer to summarize.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we start with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, just announcing that they're starting their public engagement launch regarding prevention of non-residential packaging waste. We have a news release from the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District regarding Emergency Operations Center grant award that the City of Port Alberni applied together with the ACRD on. We also have the Aquatic Center feasibility study from the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. The Public Safety Canada sent out correspondence regarding the renewal of RCMP collective agreement. We have 2 letters from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General regarding the Surrey Police Services. as well as a letter from the National Police Federation regarding the Surrey Police Services. Correspondence from Health Emergency Management, First Nations Health Authority, and Island Health providing extreme heat and wildfire smoke resource guides. We have letters from District of Port Edward and the Village of Pouce providing support for seniors advocacy resolutions submitted by the City of Port Alberni to AVICC. 2024 BC Winter Games providing participant and medalist counts by community. District of Logan Lake providing support for Bill 34. Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness providing interim Indigenous engagement requirement guidance. And lastly, minutes from April 3rd of the Alberni Valley Museum and Heritage Commission.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Councillor Solda first.
Madam Mayor, I'm just kind of curious to know, we received the Alberni-Cuddlecott Regional District, the Aquatic Center feasibility study. So next steps for us, what are they? And I'm assuming we're going to have a separate meeting at the Committee of the Whole. So that's important because there's questions I would like to ask.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I've asked the CEO if the consultant can come and do a presentation to City Council.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'd like to take out the 2024 BC Winter Games participation. It does say in the letter that if we wish to write a note of congratulations, that they can provide us with the names and addresses or emails of the athlete, coaches, or officials. Port Alberni did have one participant. I was wondering if you could reach out and get the address and name and send them a note from the city. I think that would be very nice.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that we do that. Okay. Any other notes from the correspondence? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to report from in camera. Oh, and this is just council releases for public consumption, authorization for submission of a presentation on the Harbourview lands through the Global Affairs Invest in Canada showcase taking place May 22nd, 2024. And I believe Pat summarized that initiative at a recent council meeting. So that information's already kind of out there, but just a little bit of information on some of what we were presenting there. From there, we'll go to our council reports. Are there any items from council or regional district reports that individuals would like to highlight or speak to? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt of reports? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion to receive, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to new business. Item number 1 is a report dated April 26, 2024 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding the Personnel Standing Committee. Now we'll go to our Corporate Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Council requested staff to provide a report outlining the potentials for the Personnel Standing Committee mandate, including the advantage and disadvantages of it either being a council, committee, or an administrative committee. Staff undertook a review of what other similar sized communities have in place to keep council informed on employee satisfaction, grievances, and interview process for exempt staff positions, and found that the majority of councils received updates from the Chief Administrative Officer in a closed session of council. While the CAO is responsible for the overall management of the operations of the municipality, the CAO is also responsible for advising and informing council on the operations of the municipality, and this would include human resources policies and processes, such as those captured under the Personnel Standing Committee. Staff are recommending that council dissolve the Personnel Standing Committee and rescind the Personnel Standing Committee duties policy in alignment with legislation and best practice. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments from council? Councillor Patola.
It is a slightly tangential comment, Madam Mayor. I just noticed in reading the second and third options, one of the disadvantages stated was that because it's a committee that isn't all of council, that could be a problem with having just a few councillors sit on a committee and not have accurate information flow from those few councillors to the rest of the city council. I got to say right from the beginning that I support this report, and I understand the necessity to have clear lines of authority, and that the CAO's position should be supported by all of council. I just did, though, want to point out that I'm not in agreement with that one comment, in that I think there's real value for all of city council to work as a team, more like a beehive where the bees bring back all the information for sharing with the rest of the hive, and less like a group of daycare students that all go en masse in one troop everywhere. So it is a tangential comment and not really necessary for the analysis of the motion. But I didn't want council or any public that read this to think that we're not operating as a team, and we don't have appropriate sharing of information between all the members that do sit on various different committees, of which there are many that we don't all sit on together. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Any other comments or thoughts? I think that this is an important initiative, and something that we've actually talked about, shifts to the Personnel Committee, or disbanding it altogether, for actually several years. In the time that I've been on council, it started out, I think, as largely what it is today, and then it transitioned to more of a hiring committee, which wasn't really the terms of reference or actual intent of that. We actually brought it down to hiring manager, below manager level, I think, at one point. So it was widely used in interviews where we had members of council really sitting very much in operational work. Then we started to pull that back. It was only for hiring directors. And then we kind of looked at the terms of reference and thought, well, it doesn't even reference that in the terms of reference. So we updated it, again, without actually updating it, but we updated the practice of it. I think that the recommendation today is an opportunity to recognize that even how we're using it today isn't necessarily functional in today's government and how we operate. I do think that there's value in a personnel committee of some sort, but I think that how it's currently set is not the correct practice for how we should be utilizing this committee. So I'm in full support of the recommendation and the motion that's written, which recognizing has not been made yet. And I would just state that I think it doesn't stop us from bringing forward another concept to use a committee similar as this too, for discussion in the future. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so in my limited time on the Personnel Committee on this term has been pretty much standard of what it was before when I wasn't on the Personnel Committee in my first 9 years, which was just to deal with grievances and nothing to do with hiring, really. So I've never even thought about it as that. It's always just been, there been a grievance between administration and QB staff or fire department staff or whoever, and it's just another reason to have a counselor or more than one counselor in there, just to kind of have their say and go kind of be a mediator as well, and just make sure that everybody's on the level playing field. And it's been used well, as far as I understand it, for this term and from previous. So that time in the middle where it was a hiring committee, I probably wouldn't even have thought of that or even have agreed to that, because I believe that if we're going to be hiring the best staff, it's not going to be council doing it, it's going to be staff. So I do understand things have changed over the years. I believe there, just like you said, Madam Mayor, there is, I think there is a personnel committee in some form somewhere that we should really look at, and at least have the council or a couple of councillors have that ability to be the extra layer, I guess we can call it that, without interfering or micromanaging staff and Mr. Fox in any way. So I would be willing to make this motion at this time, and then hopefully at some point in the future we can reestablish what a personnel standing committee could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead if you'd like to make the motion, but agree completely with your comments and the value of rethinking it and having further discussion about it going forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that the council dissolve the Personnel Standing Committee and further rescind the Personnel Standing Committee duties policy.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any questions? Councillor Solda.
Just a quick one. I would agree with the Councillor Mealy's comments, because in the past too, it was just the officer in charge at the RCMP we were involved with and grievances, and that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments on the motion, all in favor? And none opposed. Motion carried. And item number 2, we have decommissioning fuel tank cars.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the April 22nd regular meeting, Council directed staff to enter into a one-year agreement with the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society to operate the Alberni Pacific Railway for that term of 1 year. Staff have recently learned that in order to obtain appropriate insurance for this passenger rail service, 3 fuel tank cars must be emptied and removed from the Roundhouse site. Since those 3 tank cars are accessioned artifacts, we're required to follow the museum de-accessioning policy, which includes presenting a proposal to the Heritage Commission, which was completed earlier this month, and the Heritage Commission has approved de-accessioning of those 3 cars. So today, staff recommend that council approve up to $10,000 for the remediation and disposal of the 3 tank cars, as well as their associated contents, with funds coming from contingency.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments? Councillor Haggard.
I'm fully supportive of this motion, and the sooner we get this done, the better. May I read the motion? I'd like to move that council for the city of Port Alberni approve up to $10,000 for the disposal of 3 fuel tank cars and associated contents located at the Roundhouse with funds from line 29911 contingency funds.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Comments? Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. If you want to continue.
I'd like to move that council for the city of Port Alberni amend the 2024 to 2028 financial plan by moving $10,000 from line 29911 contingency to line 27530 industrial collections for the remediation and disposal of the 3 fuel tank cars and associated contacts located at the Roundhouse.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Comment from Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question. Is there any contamination underneath them? Are we going to hear anything? Is there still any fuel in there? How is that working?
So, Madam Mayor, there is up to 200 liters of bunker C fuel in the tanks themselves. There's also, they're not watertight at this point, so there's also water entering the cars, but no, there's not expected to be any groundwater or ground contamination from those tanks.
And Madam Mayor, we definitely need to move them now. You never know in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so before we vote on this, I think just a couple thoughts, comments from myself. I think, first of all, it's concerning that these are there with fuel in them and that we weren't necessarily expressly aware of that. And I think it just speaks to the need for us to be significantly more aware about the heritage assets that we have. I know that, of course, we've made an effort to in a sense in staffing and trying to recognize our requirements around heritage, but I do still think that we have some liabilities that we're not aware of. And so I think this is a very positive step. We need to certainly decommission. That said, I'm not even aware of a de-accessioning policy. And I think any policy that would see us needing to run decisions to protect potential liability through a heritage commission is personally, in order to get approval, is not one that I would support. I didn't know we had that policy, and through some conversations I am aware that it may not have come to council, which would mean it is not really a policy of the city. But I think that we need to really relook at the liabilities that exist in our heritage assets. I mean, we all know we had a $1.25 million oil spill. We have a lot of assets, historical assets that I know a lot of people would like to see us keep. I would like to ensure that they are not massive liabilities and risks to the city, and really appreciate that in this sense we have support from the Heritage Commission in understanding the need to get rid of or to decommission or de-accession. Don't even know what that means, but appreciate that it's a new word on our agenda today, so thank you. But that we had support in this sense, but we don't know who may be on the Heritage Commission in the future, and I think that council needs to fully be able to make these decisions without, and quickly in some cases, without necessarily taking a step of sending it to an outside committee of people. So I'd like to review the policy that may or may not exist at a future meeting so that we can ensure that it is in line with what council desires in order to protect our assets and the liability for the city. Councillor Solda.
I would agree with you, Madam Mayor. I wonder how old that policy is. Glad we're updating things. And the other question is there any other fuel tanks out there that might have fuel in it that we should be looking at like soon?
Good question.
So, Madam Mayor, no, there's not other existing tank cars at the Roundhouse site or otherwise that have fuel present. We are also in the process of working with our insurers on the agreement with the Industrial Heritage Society, and part of that is the discussion around environmental protections as well. So there will be explicit directions or information included in our insurance policies that specifically speak to environmental concerns as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic. Okay, then on the motion which has been moved and seconded, all in favor? And carried, none opposed. Thank you, Willa. Item number 3, we have Traffic Advisory Committee recommendations from April 17th meeting. Who's speaking to this? Councillor Mealy.
I can speak to this. First of all, I'd like to notice it's the Traffic Advisory Committee, not the Advisory Traffic Committee. That was a change, so it's TAC, not ATC. So just we're aware of that. So there was some concerns brought forward. The first one is on item A, which was from the school district. Representative came to discuss, and I believe this was talked about in our most recent meeting with the school district, but just the mere fact that E.J. Dunn, there isn't a crosswalk on Argyle between Anderson Avenue and E.J. Dunn. And also, we had a discussion about that. So the suggestion at this point, the recommendation is to direct staff to prepare a report outlining opportunities and associated costs for additional safety measures on Argyle in the E.J. Dunn Elementary School area.
Thank you. Motion moved. Is there a
So
seconder?
moved.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Further comments on this? Councillor Patola.
I'm just wondering if there isn't a traffic master plan being created, and would this not be encompassed by that, or would this be creating a separate report and a additional workload for the exact same staff?
Thank you. Mike, could you speak to that?
Yeah, through the chair. I think we can look at individual areas of town and bring back costs associated with correcting them. But in the Transportation Master Plan, it will be talking about general treatments for different areas, not necessarily in every specific location, as we won't be doing traffic counts and looking at all the possible things that need to be improved at every intersection or at every institution. So I believe administration was at the Traffic Advisory Committee and agreed with this direction. So I believe the report is already underway, or they're reviewing the site currently. So I don't believe this will be too much of a burden.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none on the motion, moved and seconded, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Mealy, did you want to read the next one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So item B was part of the residents in the area of Latham Road talking about the speed going up and down Latham Road after a wholesome discussion. And I won't say whose recommendation it was, that we talked about a four-way stop at Helen Street, which is in the middle of Latham, to stop high-speed traffic going up Latham. At least there's a stop at Helen, and coming down from the tracks, because we don't want to make the intersection just above the tracks a four-way stop for obvious reasons with the tracks right there. So again, staff was there, and staff talked about it, and this is, so the motion is council directs staff to prepare a report outlining traffic calming opportunities, including the installation of a four-way stop at the intersection of Latham Road and Helen Street, and further that staff proceed with the installation of traffic counts in the area.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. And comments on this one? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to make any proposed amendments to that motion. I support the motion wholeheartedly. I just hope that within the report that staff might make a note to include the use of non-Newtonian fluid speed bumps, because I think they would solve the problem there, but I haven't done enough research in it and not an expert on it.
Yeah, thank you. And I actually had thought the same. And I just want a couple things from me. I do support this motion as well. I think this is important, and I think that would solve the issue. However, I think it's not the only way to solve the issue, so great that there's other options being considered. But I want to speak to, I think, process here, because I think, really should have, obviously, a master plan that brings these high-risk areas to us rather than members of the community having to bring them to us. And then we're really just making decisions based on who comes and brings a commission or brings a petition or complains to us. And that's not, it's great for community members to come and do that and have councils act, but there could be several other roads out there that are of, just as high, if not worse, kind of concern. So I think this is out of process as a result, though I think if we can make an impact on this one, then absolutely, let's do it. But it's just like when, members of the community bring a sidewalk change to us and we make that sidewalk change. And I reflect on Grandview Road, where we spent a whole bunch of money putting a sidewalk on a road where maybe 10 people live, because the residents came and said that they can't walk on the side of the road on a very, very, very low traffic road, just because they came and complained to us. And that likely was absolutely not the greatest need at the time. And I think this was 5 years ago, but it was not the greatest need. But we listened to the people who came and, brought their issue forward to us, and ignore all the people who just sit back and hope the city proactively does the job that they're supposed to do. So just from a process perspective, I'm glad we're moving in the direction of having master plans, because this isn't how these types of improvements should be made. But until then, if we can improve safety, then let's absolutely do that, and hope for a better process going forward. And I think Councillor Haggard, did you have your hand up?
I just have a silly question. I'm just wondering why you would install traffic counts. I really don't understand what that is and why there's a need if you're putting in a four-way stop.
I'll try to answer that. Oh, sorry, unless Mr. Fox wants to answer that. No, the discussion was just to merely get the background information, because we always talk about there's so many cars speeding up and down the road. To get the actual counts was the main reason for that. Yeah, I'll wait for my turn to speak for the rest.
Councillor Dame? Okay, Councillor
Thank
Dame.
you, Madam Chair. So I think this is great. I support it. What I'm unsure about is that there's no mention of pedestrian safety or pedestrian crossing there. And with the school right there, I think that would be a part of the consideration. I'm not sure if that is just inherently included in that report, or if an amendment could be made to it.
Thank you. And I will go to Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was a great, you guys should come to the Traffic Advisory Committee, really. These are awesome. So when we discussed the four-way stop, it did indeed, because Helen Street is the road that is right there at Alberni Elementary. So we did talk about pedestrian safety, crosswalks as well for the students to get across the street across Latham. So it was part and parcel with the discussion, just to ease your mind at that. And then as well, the calming opportunities, meaning when you drive down Helen Street and you're just past the entrance to Bilo, there's right in the middle of the road, there's a kind of a caution sign that everybody seems to really respond to, and that was also part of the discussion at EJ Dunn and the previous, as a possibility. So there's other opportunities as well. Speed bumps were discussed on Latham. I'm not sure that is the highest priority, but it was definitely talked about. But definitely when we come to pedestrian safety for the school right there was part of that discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So as I'm reading the motion, this would be a report to come back to council, which would hopefully give us a lot more context of recommendations and costs, and we could make a decision from there. And I'm sure at that point, pedestrian safety and everything else would be thought of and included in the conversation. Mike, did you have additional comments?
Through the chair, I just want to also highlight that this area hasn't been on the top radar for ICBC or in all the other work that we're doing. It hasn't been highlighted in the different reports that have been done on traffic calming in the city. So we will be taking this in, and I'm sure there's going to be a report coming forward with a good solution for solving this. But looking at the city in totality, we do have to be cautious of how much money we spend in one area compared to others and the solutions that we're putting in place. I know that I get lots of complaints about 10th and lots of areas on 10th as well, as well as Redford, River Road, and the list goes on. Some of them are high priorities from ICBC, and actually we've had lots of incidents. Lower Johnson, we're working with MOTI on. And in this case, if it is as simple as just a four-way stop and getting some good data to support a four-way stop would be very vital. Now, that may take some time to gather that data to bring the proper report back to council, and hopefully by that time we're also involved in the transportation master plan, so we can take a look at that.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, regarding that particular area, we don't have near misses data or anything like that. That's nothing that's reported. But I also look at the traffic pattern on Johnson Road and how people are now doing the turnoff because they don't want to wait way up at the tracks to get on to Johnson Road to Beaver Creek and wherever they're going to the west coast. So there's a lot more traffic there. And I mean, I pick up my grandchildren all the time at the school there, and I've done the cutoffs, and so the pattern has changed, traffic has changed, how people are driving. So that's really important in that particular area to look at. People go through the school and they might go up through to get the traffic light. And so, of course, the other one is I just think that we need to look at that because we have also issues with Beaver Creek and the letter from the student that we received last council meeting. So I would love to see a report on some of our areas and how do we mitigate that because people have changed. Everything's changed around here now.
Absolutely, and I think that there's some areas that, I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, we would wait for a proactive report which lays out the priorities, and if we can improve safety in a reasonably low-cost way, where I think we can all drive and see that there's an issue. I don't drive on Latham frequently, but every time I do, I certainly notice the speed at which people are traveling, and it is a reasonably busy road for being a very residential road because it is used as sort of like a through road for getting around busier areas. So I think there's a clear issue on Latham, whether we have the hard facts to support that or not, and probably a reasonably simple solution to improve it. So I just do want to recognize that I think there are other areas as well, and that we want to, as much as possible, wherever possible, avoid kind of a complaint-based, you know, if you yell the loudest, you get your issue solved, and we ignore all the other ones. And I'm not saying that's what's happened here. I think they brought forward a valid concern in an organized way, and definitely appreciate how they came forward. It's just sort of that always better to have the information first, but we're not just not in that position yet. So happy to support this. Okay, seeing no other comments, motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried, none opposed. Okay, moving on to item number 4, welcome sign enhancements, and I will go to our CAO.
Thank you, and through the chair, we were excited to get started on just talking about the welcoming sign and starting the design. And I know that at the last council meeting, we actually got to show the replica of it with the trees. Since then, we did engage with our First Nations partners, and it was suggested that we incorporate some First Nations art into the sign. And we thought that was a great idea as staff, and we thought we'd bring this forward as an opportunity to work collaboratively with our partners. We've also had an artist statement provided to us, so it is a late addition on the agenda that we could work with them on making sure the design is in agreement with what the city's outlook would be for it. So if council approves this today, we would work with the artist and bring back a final rendition of it before proceeding with installation.
Thank you very much for the report, and I'll just note that just because you said we engaged with First Nations, I just wanted to note that we re-engaged with First Nations because this project was paused for a couple of years. We hadn't there'd been a gap in time since we worked with Sachot and Hupachesset on this. So I will just say that I'm really excited about sort of the proposed additions to the sign. I think it still stays very much within the scope of budget that we wanted to, and ideally will really improve the sign to keep it largely as is, but add in, I think the intent is to add in a First Nations designed bear, sort of a tree. One of the trees would have more First Nations design character to it, and a fish as well. Is that right?
Through the chair, yes. It's in a lot of First Nation in the Toronto area, there's lots of images that take on other images as it goes along. And this would incorporate, I believe it was a whale, a killer whale, coming out of a tree and then into some bears. And that it would also work into with the acknowledgement statement. So.
Awesome. Okay. And so council, there is a small increased cost to the sign for this, and the recommendation is that we draw this from our reconciliation fund. And a little bit of background, our reconciliation fund that we budget every year is $50,000 in our budget. We use it for various initiatives. One that's notable, in my opinion, was putting up 2 additional flagpoles at City Hall, where now we fly permanently, not just on National Indigenous Peoples Day, but every day of the year, the Sashawtan Huipachessit flags. We've done a number of other initiatives as well, and that was a recommendation that came from our reconciliation committee that we had for about 3 years that was jointly with Sashawat Huipachessit and Friendship Center to represent urban Indigenous people in the community. So that reconciliation fund, I think, has contributed to a number of positive projects in the community, and if we can use it for the welcome sign as well, then I think that would be a fantastic fit. Questions, comments? Councillor Haggard.
May I read the motion, Madam Mayor?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I'd like to move that council approve $12,000 from the reconciliation operating budget to enhance the City of Port Alberni welcome sign with Indigenous art.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Dane. And additional comments or questions? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. All right, that takes us to question period, which is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. A maximum of 3 questions will be permitted per speaker, and for anyone participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature and I will call on you to ask your questions in the order which you appear. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions today? Okay. Seeing no members of the public to ask questions, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola on the motion. Oh, before we adjourn, sorry, before I just call that, I did just want to note, and I don't know on the camera if we can kind of zoom off of me, but I wanted to just note the new installation at City Hall for people who are able to see it online. So this is kind of a different but exciting addition to our council chambers. So this partition was built in collaboration with our contractors on the SOMAS site and supported through Work by Home Hardware. We wanted to pay homage to the many employees and the history of the SOMAS mill who have contributed and continue to contribute to the city of Port Alberni and the creation of our town. The wood is recycled from the SOMAS mill, from a large beam that was part of an above ground conveyor structure, and the partition was built to create a designated space for council to do their work. I think that it is a beautiful piece of art almost that just is a nice addition to our council chambers and really celebrates the history of the SOMAS lands and really just a piece of our community that is very much changing, but had a significant role in building what Port Alberni is today. So just wanted to speak to that before we adjourn our meeting, but I think adjournment has been moved and seconded, so I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.